The camera's rolling. The studio lights burn hot. And there she is, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Eyes locked, posture unshaken, a thin binder labeled "The Receipts" resting beside her hand. Across the table, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries shifts slightly in his seat, the corners of his polished Washington smile starting to falter. Moments earlier, he dropped the line that lit the fuse. The progressive wing is destroying our party's chances with their radical ideas. The words had barely landed when Crockett sat forward, calmly, like someone who'd been waiting for this exact moment. This wasn't just another political panel. This wasn't just another disagreement on strategy. This was a reckoning, live, unfiltered, and unlike anything the Democratic Party has seen in years. By the time the segment was over, millions were watching. Hashtags were trending. Donations were flooding in. And a message was echoing across the political landscape. The establishment just got caught on camera, and Jasmine Crockett brought the receipts. Stick around, because what you're about to hear might be the moment the game changed forever. And before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next. It was supposed to be a typical segment, the kind of Sunday morning panel where nothing truly controversial happens, where talking points are exchanged, smiles are forced, and everyone leaves with their egos intact. But Hakeem Jeffries changed that, with just one sentence. It came wrapped in his usual calm, calculated cadence. A line he'd probably rehearsed, one that had been whispered in donor circles, in off-the-record interviews, behind closed doors at fundraising dinners. But this time, he said it into a camera. The progressive wing is destroying our chances with their radical ideas. 16 words. That's all it took to shatter the illusion of unity. For a split second, the room held its breath. The moderator blinked. The other panelists looked at each other. One nodded ever so slightly. The other shifted in her seat like she wanted no part of what was coming. Jeffries sat back, the shadow of a smirk crossing his face. He thought he'd just made a power move, and maybe he had, until Crockett moved. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't leap to interrupt. Instead, she sat forward, slow and steady, as if a switch had flipped. And in that moment, everyone watching knew. This wasn't going to be another polite disagreement. "Thank you for that, Leader Jeff," Crockett began, her voice level but laced with steel. "And thank you for finally saying out loud what many in leadership have only whispered behind closed doors." The room froze. Jeffrey's smile didn't disappear, not yet, but it no longer reached his eyes. Crockett continued, locking eyes with him. "Let's be clear for the viewers. When you say radical, what exactly are we talking about?" She ticked them off on her fingers, one by one. Universal health care, which every other developed country already has. A living wage, so people don't need 3 jobs to survive. Taking climate change seriously, so the planet stays habitable. She paused. "If that's what counts as radical, then the problem isn't our ideas. The problem is how low the bar has been set in this building we all work in." The moderator tried to step in, probably to steer things back to the agenda. But Crockett raised her hand gently, without looking away from Jeffries. "No, I'd really like Leader Jeff to explain which of these ideas are scaring voters away. Because, according to polling from our own party, these policies are overwhelmingly popular." Jeffries leaned toward his mic, cool as ever. "Congresswoman, I think you're mischaracterizing my point. We all want progress, but we have to be strategic. We have to build coalitions. Your approach—" "My approach?" Crockett interrupted, her tone sharp now. "Let's talk about that." She reached down beside her, picked up the tablet that had been resting on the table, held it up. "I came prepared." And she had. In the last election cycle, Progressive candidates outperformed establishment Democrats in swing districts by an average of 5 points, she said. That's not my opinion. That's from internal DNC analysis. For the first time, Jeffries blinked. That data doesn't account for... I have the full report, Crockett cut in, tapping her tablet. Would you like me to read the section about which messages resonated with voters in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin? The moderator's eyes widened. The control room scrambled. A CNN producer reportedly whispered, "Don't cut. This is gold." Crockett wasn't done. "You want to talk about strategy, Leader Jeff? Let's talk about yours." She pulled up a screen and turned the tablet slightly toward the camera. 2 years ago, when we had a bill to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices, something 92% of Americans support, it got gutted. The insulin cap vanished. She looked directly at Jeffries. "You led that charge, and the same quarter, you received $218,000 from pharmaceutical PAC silence." Jeffries' smile tightened. His jaw shifted slightly. "Those contributions are public record," he replied. "But that characterization is completely accurate," Crockett said flatly. She turned her tablet again, this time showing a graph. Red highlights, donation dates, votes, a damning correlation for everyone to see. "Would you like to see the trend line between major industry donations and which policies mysteriously died in committee?" And then she delivered the line that would soon be clipped, memed, shared across every platform. "It's not radical to demand transparency. It's radical to pretend voters don't see what's really happening." For the first time in the segment, Jeffries had no immediate reply, and for the first time in his career, he wasn't in control of the room. The silence after Crockett's statement wasn't just awkward, it was surgical. The kind of silence that slices through polished rhetoric and makes everyone in the room sit up straighter. Jeffries adjusted his tie, not frantically, but not casually either. It was the movement of someone who just realized the ground beneath him had shifted. Crockett didn't wait. "Let's go deeper," she said, eyes never leaving her tablet. "I want to make sure the American people see what's happening behind the curtain." She tapped again. "Let's talk about climate." Another chart appeared on screen. Emission targets versus final legislation outcomes. A line graph with bright red annotations showing the progressive provisions that were stripped from the infrastructure bill. "Leader Jeff," she continued, "you personally assured members of the Progressive Caucus that these climate measures would be included in the final package. They weren't." She turned the tablet to face him. "And in that same time period, your office received over $300,000 from energy industry donors, many of whom lobbied against those exact measures." Jeffries finally spoke. "Congresswoman, I don't believe that's a fair—" "I'm not interested in beliefs," she interrupted. "I'm interested in votes, in donations, in receipts." She paused, then repeated, louder this time, "Receipts." The moderator leaned forward, clearly aware that this was no longer a typical panel. One of the other panelists stared straight ahead, as if hoping not to be noticed. "March 15th, Crockett said, "you told CNN you strongly supported a $15 minimum wage. That same week, you backed poison pill amendments that sank the bill in committee. June 22nd, you publicly supported stronger voting rights protections, while your staff helped remove enforcement mechanisms from the draft legislation. September 8th, you said climate change is, quote, the existential crisis of our time. Meanwhile, your donors were rewriting the standards behind the scenes. Every line was a strike, not shouted, not emotional, just precise, cold, documented. These are facts, Crockett said, tapping again. I'm not here to score points. I'm here because millions of Americans are tired of leaders saying the right things and doing the opposite. She turned slightly toward the audience, both in the studio and at home.
They're tired of being told that healthcare is too expensive, while Big Pharma cuts checks to your re-election campaign. They're tired of watching climate bills get diluted while oil money floods Capitol Hill. They're tired of watching you promise change with one hand and hold up a donor ledger with the other. Jeffries tried to speak again. "Congresswoman, I think you're drawing unfair conclusions from—" "Then refute them," she snapped. For the first time, her voice rose, just slightly, not to yell, but to dare. "Go ahead. Refute a single number. Deny a single donation. Explain to voters why the things you claim to support mysteriously disappear when the votes are counted." Jeffries' composure was thinning now. His voice, usually smooth and measured, came out clipped. "You're implying that campaign contributions directly determine policy." "I'm not implying anything," Crockett replied. "I'm documenting it." Her finger hovered over the screen. Then slowly, she swiped to the final graphic. It was a simple chart. 2 columns. Column A, Jeffries's public statements in favor of progressive policies. Column B, his behind-the-scenes votes, procedural maneuvers, and committee decisions that quietly killed those same policies. "This isn't conjecture," she said. "It's accountability." And then she said what every viewer at home was already thinking. This isn't a policy disagreement anymore. This is about trust.
And then it happened. The moment that would be clipped, subtitled, remixed, tweeted, memed, and played on every news outlet from MSNBC to Fox. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, calm, steady, and slid the tablet across the table, right in front of Hakeem Jeffries. "Here," she said. "Take a look. 27 times in the last 3 years, you've made public commitments to progressive policies, and then worked to kill or weaken those same proposals behind closed doors." The screen showed exact dates, quotes, votes, donations, all cross-referenced, all indisputable. Jeffries looked at the tablet. His face didn't move, but his eyes blinked rapidly, betraying something his practiced expression couldn't hide. He reached for his water glass. And that's when the camera zoomed in, just enough to catch the slight tremble in his hand. Crockett didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply folded her hands on the table and looked him in the eye. "The American people deserve better," she said. The moderator opened his mouth, maybe to wrap things, maybe to salvage the segment, but the control room cut in through his earpiece. "Don't interrupt. Let it play. We're trending already." On Twitter, the hashtags were exploding. Number CROCKETTREECEPTS, Donor Democrats, exposed live. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, "This is how it's done. Bring the receipts, always." Bernie Sanders posted the clip with 3 words. "The truth matters." Even conservative accounts were picking it up, gleeful to see Democratic leadership under fire. But this wasn't just spectacle. It was surgical. A precise dissection of establishment doublespeak, done live, without shouting, without theatrics, just cold, hard, undeniable truth. The binder, the tablet, the look on Jeffries' face, all of it, a perfectly orchestrated moment that no spin room could clean up. Back in the studio, the other panelists sat in stunned silence. One finally muttered something about needing to unify, but by then, it didn't matter. The conversation had moved. The power had shifted. Crockett had done what progressives had long struggled to do. Not just argue, not just demand. Prove, expose, deliver. With receipts. By the time the segment wrapped, the aftershocks were already shaking Washington. The clip of Jasmine Crockett sliding her tablet across the table, calmly dismantling Hakeem Jeffries with surgical precision, was online within minutes. By the end of the hour, it had over 4 million views on X. By midnight, it had crossed 20 million across TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram Reels. And by sunrise, Crockett receipts was the #1 trending topic in America. Reaction poured in from every corner of the political universe. Progressives were ecstatic. Grassroots organizers, climate activists, healthcare advocates all lit up timelines with one message. She said what we've all been thinking, and she backed it up. Moderates were stunned. Some publicly defended Jeffries, others more quietly admitted she'd made points they couldn't just ignore. Mainstream media couldn't look away. CNN ran its own clip on repeat. MSNBC booked Crockett for an interview within hours. Even networks like ABC and CBS covered it in morning news packages. Then came the donations. Crockett's campaign reported $3.1 million raised in just 24 hours, mostly in small dollar donations, averaging $24. Her email list doubled overnight. Texts poured into her office from progressive caucus members, some previously quiet, now saying, "You cracked the ceiling. We're ready to go louder." Meanwhile, Jeffries' team went into damage control mode. A carefully worded statement was released. While Democrats may have internal disagreements, we remain united in our commitment to defeating Republicans and delivering for the American people. Nowhere in the statement did Jeffries address the receipts, the donations, the votes, and that made it worse. Because silence on the specifics? That's an answer, too. Conservative media, of course, jumped in with knives out. Fox News ran with, "Democratic Civil War, Crockett dismantles party leadership live." The Young Turks declared, "This is the moment progressives stopped asking for a seat," and took the mic. Even centrist strategists had to admit, you don't have to agree with her politics to recognize what she did. That was a masterclass in accountability. And for the first time in a long time, the establishment looked vulnerable. Over the next week, the impact of that moment grew clearer, not just in the headlines, but in how the halls of power started to shift. Behind the scenes, there was panic. Jeffries reportedly called an emergency meeting with members of the Progressive Caucus. Sources in the room described the vibe as tense but different. For the first time, leadership wasn't issuing vague promises. They were listening and asking what it would take to rebuild trust. Why? Because the old playbook, ignore, delay, distract, didn't work this time. Not when millions had already seen the evidence, not when Crockett had receipts and the world had watched her drop them. In the days that followed, stalled legislation began to move. A stronger prescription drug pricing bill, one long shelved, was suddenly reintroduced with fewer corporate concessions. Climate provisions that had been dismissed as unrealistic were reopened for debate. And one by one, centrist Democrats began to walk back their opposition to policies like a $15 minimum wage and paid family leave. Public polling reflected the shift. Trust in establishment leadership among Democratic voters dropped 11 points. Support for progressive policies jumped 13 points, especially among voters under 40. The media, for once, didn't frame it as a progressive outburst. They called it what it was, a reckoning, and the message was clear. When you come prepared, when you bring truth, facts, and fire, the system can't hide behind its usual smoke. Jasmine Crockett didn't just challenge the establishment. She exposed it, she embarrassed it, and she changed the balance of power, maybe not permanently, but visibly. Now the question wasn't, should we listen to progressives? The question was, what happens if we don't? In politics, there are speeches, and then there are moments. Moments that don't just trend, moments that don't just go viral, moments that shift the rules. For good. Jasmine Crockett's on-air takedown of Hakeem Jeffries wasn't just another progressive outburst. It wasn't about scoring social media points or creating sound bites. It was a battle for the soul of a party. fought with facts, clarity, and conviction. And she won. She showed what it looks like when a politician stops playing defense. When someone comes to the table not just to debate, but to dismantle the status quo, live with receipts in hand. For every activist who's been told to wait their turn, for every voter who's been told their demands are too much, too soon, for every progressive who's been told that bold ideas don't poll well in swing districts, this moment was for them. And now, the game has changed. The expectations have changed. The playbook has changed. So the only question left is this: who's next? Thanks for watching. If you believe in accountability, if you believe in bringing receipts, then smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. This is just the beginning. Stay loud, stay informed, and stay ready.